You're listening to On the Payroll, my podcast about leadership, project management, consulting, CRM delivery such as Salesforce and Microsoft, and all things in between, topics that interest me. These are the things that I talk to my guests about. Today, I speak to Deepthi Daita, Solutions Architect from Salesforce, and we cover a wide range of topics from what it's like to be a woman in technology, to finding your purpose and running great projects and working with great teams. With that, I just invite you to listen in on our conversation. Thank you. Enjoy. Hello, Deepthi. How are you today? Sorry, I'm going to start again. Okay. Hello, Deepthi. Welcome to my podcast, On the Payroll. How are you today?
Doing very, very good. Thank you for asking. It's been a good week so far, work-wise, football-wise, sports-wise, whatnot. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the weekend as well. I think Sunday will be packed heavy, but yeah, really good. How about you?
Indeed. Yes, no, I'm also in a pretty good mood. We've been trying to arrange this conversation for some time, so I'm really looking forward to chatting with you today. I like your journey mainly because it mirrors mine quite a bit in terms of a lot of my experiences come from working with partners, and I know that's something that you've done as well. Can you just talk about and tell us the story of your journey to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So I started off my career, at least in the UK, not with a partner company, but with an end user organization. Well, in the context of the technology, I guess. But yeah, so that was all, let's say, on Microsoft products and whatnot. Eventually, I then switched technologies and moved into Salesforce and working with numerous partners. Well, not numerous, 2 or 3 partners in Salesforce. And working with different partners like this, it's really interesting because I've also worked with varied size organizations, varied size partners along my journey. Personally, in all of this space, I've also not just stuck to one role, but I've changed different roles as well. So I initially was a technical consultant, and then I moved into functional, and then I went back into architecture. So it's all like, different roles. So it's been really good. And the good thing about working with so many organizations of different sizes and dynamic is the fact that you can see how some of the decisions may be made quickly, depending on what the process is and the size is. Some of the decisions take time. The amount of lead time you have as an individual to go onto the projects, the amount of scope you have again as an individual, which I had to grow within one company. There's lots of varied experiences, and I think it really helped me along my way to come to where I am today, because definitely I think with all of that experience, it would have been, I'm sure it gave me exposure to a lot of various situations, which really helped me. But I think the key thing probably is it's different sizes, and how you see things progressing faster or slower depending on the size of the organization, which was really fascinating and interesting to see.
So let me just pick on that point then, because like I said, I have also worked in different size partners. What have been your observations in terms of, you got your small partner, you got your boutique, and then you got your large GSIs. So I know obviously right now you're working for Salesforce. So that's a lot more different than working for a partner. In terms of the sizes, in terms of how quickly they do things, do you have a preference on, if you were to make a choice, what has been your most favorite experience in working with partner?
So if I start with, let's say, boutique or medium-sized partner companies, the really good thing is that you get to know your team quite quickly internally. And I feel like what we were discussing just a while ago, what I feel is if you have that relationship with your team where it's a bit more transparent and genuine, and if you have that bond built ahead of you starting on a project, I found that it really helps, because there is a plan and there is a program and there is a project plan, deadlines, what's not, milestones, everything that you commit to a client to make that project successful. But what happens behind the scene, I think, is much more bigger factor in terms of how it all comes together and how the team interacts with each other. So I find that that's a great positive of working in companies where you can very quickly get to know each other. If it's just like across the desk, like saying, hey, how's it going to happen, blah, 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 so you can have that conversation quite quickly. The downside, however, is sometimes the processes may fail. So it's like how much governance you have, what kind of backup do you have? Did we give it enough time, or did we get into the what do you say, the wall of bidding and committing to deadlines that we may not deliver? Did we have enough cushion there? So I think that sometimes may not be 100% perfect, or most of the times perfect, but that's what I find in terms of the projects for that size of companies. Sometimes bigger companies, GSIs, the good thing is you have large projects, like projects may even run a couple of years. So if you are motivated to work for that long for a single client, I think then it works. For me, it does, because I always like to see how what I've started ends up being like. So if I'm working on like a big transformation project, I would want to see the end of it, not probably just deliver a piece of it and then walk away. That's just me, that's my personality. So that's one thing that I like, which is the size and complexities, etc. Sometimes the process can slow you down a little bit if you have to get any approvals, if you have to just get any decisions made, and that kind of little bit detail. But and then it's on a very generic and higher level. I think none of us can ever escape from bureaucracy anyways, and there's always that bureaucracy that you'd either have to be a part of, or you somehow have to navigate it. But so there's all pros and cons, and I personally, for me, my work satisfaction comes from delivering quality work, which sounds like, oh yeah, everyone wants that, but for me, that's important. And I'm getting better, and I can keep all this politics aside and focus on what kind of work that I'm doing. And so I've stuck to working on some of these big projects recently, which I really enjoy.
I think what you say is, I would agree quite heartily. There's a trade-off between governance, processes we're working, and speed of just doing stuff. So as you mentioned, for a small to medium-sized company, governance generally isn't a very big thing. Whereas for the larger ones, GSIs, the global system integrators, it's obviously a default place, because their projects are so much more complex, so much bigger, that the potential for issues, and if things go wrong, potentially litigation, they've got to limit their exposures. And therefore, yes, that's the reason for all the governance, for all the review. Both of us worked in the same company at CAP. We had bid reviews. There's so many layers, and totally understand why that is the case. You also touched on something that I really like, which is working in a boutique company. You get to know your team. And one of the things that I really enjoyed was, as you say, you get to know them so well. And the thing that oils the engine of the project team is that you know each other so well that you can anticipate each other things happen. And plus that anticipation gives us that speed that you would otherwise have to clarify information. There's miscommunication, there's da. So I think I would agree with that. That's something I kind of miss in a boutique.
Yeah, exactly that. Because usually I think it's a very common problem in the, not problem, but what do you say?
Challenge.
Yeah, probably in the IT world or in day-to-day lives is probably like the jokingly quotes that go around in terms of, oh, that could have just been an email rather than an hour meeting. So that kind of things, right? So if you're just sitting side by side, why don't you just talk? We don't need to involve, we don't need to copy 100 people in CC. It's not about getting the limelight or whatever all the time. It's about working towards project goals and making it work. And some things need probably, what do you say, exposure to other people in the team just for the benefit of the project. But how much of it is really needed or not, it's a fine balance, isn't it? And I think in smaller companies you can like just talk very easily. I'm sure it's not that in bigger companies you don't, but yeah, I just have this whole thing going in my head about email versus a phone conversation or just talk to each other. But yeah,
I totally agree, especially now when it's all virtual.
Yeah.
And you can't just go, hey, how was your weekend? Or, you actually have to schedule a Zoom call. Although I think at Salesforce, it's no more going back like what it was, right? Keeping the flexibility.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, they're slowly opening it up. Yeah, that's true.
Okay. I think I kind of miss just sitting next to someone and just absorbing.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, me too. Likewise, to be honest. Yeah, it's been a while. I can't remember when it was the last time since sat next to a stranger, or someone that's not in my house. But yeah.
So at Salesforce, where you're working with that, when was the last time you've gone into the office?
So I joined Salesforce very recently, and since I joined, it's been COVID. So it's also been working from home. I'm quite looking forward to going back into the towers, because when I was not working for Salesforce, I did go to the towers quite often. I like the building and all the fanciness that comes with the building. So I'm actually excited to go. I probably might go maybe mid-August, end of August, but yeah.
Okay, something to look forward to.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I think for both of us, our lives revolve around projects.
Yep.
So there's going to be a few questions about projects.
Yep.
So in your opinion, given the number of projects that you've been on, what has been your most enjoyable project? Or if there's a few, can you draw out some of the elements that made that project really fun and enjoyable?
Yeah, so I was a part of a project which went on for about 12 months, and which was a fantastic one, which is what comes to mind at least now. And the reason why that project is close to me is, firstly, the customer who I was working with were completely signed up and onboarded, so they would listen to what we are saying. When I say listen, genuinely the literal meaning of the word listen, because obviously you may understand what I mean by when a customer is listening to you versus they're hearing you, but the things are not working how they should. So the customer was fully signed up. So that is something that I enjoyed. And what I mean by that is we always used to have a collaborative conversation about how we make things happen. Obviously, all of this comes from first fundamentally you establishing that trust. But once that trust has been established, then both of you know that you're working towards that common goal rather than just finishing off and signing off on the deliverables that you said you deliver in your SOW. That's not that is of course the target, but it's meeting them in the right way. So that's one aspect that I really enjoy, because I used to have genuine, proper conversations with my customer then, and the project is still up for a success. And whatever I worked on, I'm personally very proud of this. And whatever I worked on, when it went to production, and that's for a very large number of markets, there's not even a single, high priority issue or anything that we've seen. And that I take it as credit for the team, because that just shows that we've collaborated quite well. So that's something that I really enjoy. The other aspect on the same project, the reason why I like it again is internal collaboration. So there were multiple architects on the project, and it wasn't like, oh, I'm the architect, I'm looking at this piece, and you're the architect, you're looking at that piece. We always used to brainstorm, think about how we connect the dots together, always exchange ideas. It wasn't like, I'm going to give you the idea offline, so what happens to the fact that the idea came from me? There was no insecurity, not much. So we collaborated quite well, and we really worked as a team. And all of this sounds very, what do you say? It's not very common these days, isn't it? But yeah, so that works really well. So because of these two reasons, that project is really, really, it's close to me, and I thought it worked. It worked quite well. Yeah.
So if I were to just summarize what you just said, is that it boils down to communication and relationships.
Yeah, the trust, both with your external people, with your customers, and internally as well. Once you've established the trust and people know that you have your own way of delivering it, but you will deliver and you are working towards the common goal, and it's not like a personal agenda that you're working on that project. Yeah, so which I think is, it makes sense as well. It's not that you obviously want to be emotional about your project deliverables, but there's also no point in being fake about it, because in the end you have to make it work and make it happen. So definitely, once you got that trust and have the channel to talk or have an open conversation, really discuss about pros and cons, because I can come up, all of us can come up with multiple options, but it's about properly understanding what A option, this works and this won't work, B option, blah, blah, blah. So it's properly analyzing and having that open conversation, isn't it? So you go into the fire knowing what the impact is, rather than saying, oh, it's going to be all green and it's all going to be Christmas everywhere. That's never going to work, isn't it? So yeah.
So there's also an element of integrity and honesty. So relationships, communication, and honesty, really, that made it all work.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think so too, 100%. Because technical skills, it's important to have the right technical skills and your core concepts as well, so that you make your staffing and resourcing all correctly. But a lot of us are fully able that we can gain technical skills quite quickly. I can sit over the weekend and probably understand a concept by Monday. Not that I'll be an expert at it, but at least I'll be able to answer or deal with it. So yeah, technical skills, you can gain it over time. It won't probably take much long. Of course, the experience will make you perfect, but however, all the rest of the skills, I think that can only come from your attitude and your personality, isn't it? So yeah.
I fully agree. So on that note, if I flip it around and say, can you think of some of your more, what I call the character building projects, or those that didn't go quite so well? Can you think of any? Can you draw some themes out of it, and what made it not that great?
I can talk about what's coming to my mind right now, obviously. But if you're talking about it a week later, I may have a different example. But right now, I think it was in my initial phase of the career when I made my switch between the technologies. Actually, it doesn't matter. Even in my previous technology, whatever I was working on, but during the initial phases of your career where you don't have a very senior position, or where you know that you're obviously not that experienced, is when even back then I used to think that even though the ideas or the suggestions I had may not be perfect, I never thought that I was not making sense. However, what I've realized is at times your position matters a little bit, like for people to listen to you. The title that you have in your signature sometimes has an impact. And I'm not sure if I ever bought into that concept, because whoever I'm working with in my team, if they're making a point, doesn't matter what kind of experience you have, I'll definitely listen, and we'll always have a conversation. It doesn't matter if you're 5 levels in the so-called hierarchy or anywhere in the hierarchy. I'm not sure how it matters, to be honest, but that's something that I've faced in my career, where because of where I was in the ladder chain, or sometimes you're probably not heard enough, or you're not given that importance. So it's just like the amount of fight that you have to put in then. Yes, that's not that. Yeah.
I think unconscious bias is very, very common. And we all do it, because it's just the way the brain works, isn't it? The need to very quickly pigeonhole you so that I know how to interact with you, so that I've got patterns that I can refer to. From my observation, I think the mark of maturity is to just having a pause to say, look, someone just wrote me an email, and under the email it says a graduate or intern versus a technical architect, and a lot of people in their minds would pay more attention to the one that's coming from the technical architect. And it takes someone who's got some emotional intelligence and the maturity to say, hang on, this person may have something valuable as well, and taking the pause to actually give that person space and time to respond and provide value for the team. So I totally get what you're trying to say. It is frustrating.
Yeah.
I think especially for us women in the world of tech. So we're already, so I've spoken to quite a few women in the podcast, and we have similar observation in that, first of all, we're women, which, to be fair, in the UK is not quite as bad as where I come from in Malaysia. The disparity between how we are seen is much less, still here, not quite as big. So there's that, number one. And number two, both you and I are in a minority as well, so there's like a couple of steps you've got to just to be the same level. So I totally get you, and I think that's something that still has some way to go. It's moving in the right direction.
That's true. And you've raised such a great point, and I think I can talk about it for like rest of the day or even for the whole weekend, because that topic is really, really close to my heart, and my personal experiences as well. So it's just generally in terms of how it is being a woman in technology, and you choose an area where it's probably predominantly a lot of males, and it's not about comparison, or it's not like a fight or any negativity associated to it, but it's generally what you might have to most likely navigate through, and some of these things which you may want to ignore or have to ignore just because you're looking at the brighter side of things. So it's a very great point and a very big topic, and it definitely plays a role, isn't it? When I was new to the country, it's always, the kind of words you use, your choice of words, whatever it is. Sometimes it's like you can create different impressions with different groups of audiences you talk to. So it's all about, in the end, how you deal with it, and whether you know in your head that if it is that important to even pay attention or not, or you just move on. But the thing is, whatever it is, even if you want to move on, it's still a conscious decision, right? So that there is some voluntary or involuntaries, and it will have an impact. So or might, but so it's a good one.
How do you deal with it when you come across something like this?
So in the very I'll try to keep it short. So in the very, very beginning, I used to think about it a little bit more, and I used to get impacted a little bit more as well. Because I used to think, do I need to change my ways of working or my behavior and personality and all of this? It's not like a self-doubt, but I used to think, whether do I need to fit into any culture or any box? But I thought what really helped me is I always believed in how I deal with my work and approach to my work. So I think that's probably helped me in sort of just navigating my way and focusing on my work, rather than how different people are reacting to what I say, or rather not even reacting to what I say. So I eventually overcame it. And now I take some stance as well, which previously I wouldn't have. So not that I want to go into too much of detail, or I'm not sure if it's relevant for this podcast, but so I think I had my journey, and I've learned a few things over time as well. But now I think I'm in a much better and settled place than what I was probably 10-15 years ago.
I think what helps, again, for both of us, is that with experience comes two things. One is we just get better at dealing with things like that. And number two, the experience just gives us more gravitas. Just that. If we know what we're talking about, it's very difficult for someone to refute and say, you don't know what you're talking about because you're young, you're a woman, you're whatever that might be. So it does get better through time, just naturally. I think for the younger people coming in, I remember at CAP, there was an intern that I was mentoring, and she was also a minority.
Right.
And
there are things that we can say, like, this is how you cope when the situation comes up. But at the same time, it will get better if you just focus inwards on getting better yourself in the craft that you choose. You just keep on finding ways to master it.
Yeah.
And there'll come a time when people are always asking you for your opinion because no one knows better than you do.
Yeah.
So I think
Yes.
that's
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great point, right? Yeah, exactly that. And I've come to believe, and I do believe it's now, that you just have to be the master of your own destiny and design your own career. Because who's going to, even if people tell you like, oh no, maybe is it too soon for promotion, or is it oh what, or maybe people may have opinion, but you know your skill, you know what your inner voice is telling you, you know what you're capable of. How much of it do you want to prove to others versus it's all literally in your hands, isn't it? And I really believe that you can craft your way. However, the only thing is probably there will be hurdles, and it's all about how we deal with the hurdles as well. So it's not just about having motivation or make pink turn blue, but it's all the navigation and all the effects, side impact of that as well, isn't it? Yeah. Because sorry, go on.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say that especially in architecture space, also it's not common, at least, to see a lot of women in architecture. So it's very so for me it's been good, because this is an area where I always wanted to be, but I also know that it's not a common place for a lot of, or where you see a lot of women. I'm not sure of the reason exactly, but it's each to their own and choice, right? So when you enter it, how you want to react to some of that or not? Do you want to address some of the reactions or not? Totally in your control. But the thing what we can't avoid, like what you said, is getting better though, is all these reactions and all the prejudice that may exist, which is slowly getting better and better. But in my experience, I think there's a long way to go.
I think, I don't know, maybe I'm a masochist. When I first started my career, I was in Microsoft. I was doing infrastructure, network, Microsoft Exchange. It was really, really male dominated. I was crawling under desks to do printers and the server rooms and all of that. And I just got a perverse satisfaction out of just knowing more than others. And so I hope that, that the females coming into the industry don't get put off, because once you just focus on yourself and just get so good, that it's quite satisfying to be able to just put someone in their place. So I hope the trend continues. It is getting bigger and wider.
But, that's true.
Definitely not as common as it was before. I was one of the first Microsoft certified systems engineer, one of the first female in Malaysia.
Wow.
96.
Wow.
And
nice.
I started taking a habit of carrying my little card. I don't know if Salesforce do it, but Microsoft, we had this little card in my ID to prove I've done it.
Right.
But it was just a little ego trip, just to put people in their place. But there was something about just getting better at stuff myself, just so people can't put me down.
No, that's really great. Good to know. And also obviously like things you're doing as well, right? Like having an open conversation like this podcast and everything, where obviously both of us, it's quite obvious, but both of us are women and we're talking about all these things. So anyone who might listen to this, I mean, the kind of thoughts this may trigger, and just even anything, whatever medium we can, is going to drive things to fall in the right way, right place. I think all of this is really, really good stuff, isn't it? Because like what we were discussing earlier, again, project deliverables, sign-offs, milestones, salaries, promotions, all of this is going to be there for a larger part of our lives. But what's the little bit of a contribution that you give back to the society, and how you making it a little bit better for probably the younger generation, or how it's all of that is equally important as well, isn't it? Because we can think about us, but there's bigger elements than just my career that needs to change for a lot of things to fall in place. So yeah.
Indeed. Let me ask you one question, and are you able to share what you think your biggest mistake have been and how you've either recovered from it or how it has changed you?
Yes, I can. And what's coming to my mind again right now is not speaking my mind. So there was a phase where I thought maybe I should just mellow it down or make it sound, what do you say, appropriate to not just I curse today. That's not what I mean, but make it sound right and fit in the boxes and just sound, or just suck it up and then just move on. And probably not try hard enough to make things happen. But over the time now, what I've learned is if you're not liking something, or if you're not, let's say, if you don't see yourself fit for a specific role, or if you think that's not going to help your career ambitions, it's equally important to at least have an open conversation. It's not about whether you do that at the end of it or not, because when you have an open conversation, then at least you know that your concerns are addressed, and you will have a clarity whether that helps, and helps both the project and your personal aspirations as well. And you've set the expectations right, because sometimes a lot of projects or whatever we do in our lives do fail because you probably didn't set up right expectations at the very beginning. Sometimes you just accept it, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to work my way. We're going to break through this, and that could be, if that means that if it's eating up like 8 hours a day of your weekend, then probably for let's say 6 years, 1 month, 6 months, 1 year, then it's up to you, but probably not very ideal. So yeah, so that's something that I've learned is try and speak your mind as much as possible, so that it's good for everyone, for you to start with, which is the most important, and good for the business as well.
Do you think that it's just as important to be truthful internally as well?
I think 100% yes. But what I do end up finding myself at times is I can sort of, even if I think that this may be not the right thing to do, even if it's a small activity that I have to do in the project, like a task or whatever, I am okay with it, because I can look at the bigger picture and say, I need to do something now just to get to where I want to get to, as long as it's not eating into my conscience, and as long as it's not against my ethics and morals, and as long as it's good for something to get to where I want to get to, I'm okay with it, because I know that world is not ideal. It's not going to literally every time be the way that you want it to be, but as long as it's in the threshold range, I'm quite flexible as well. Yeah, so even if I'm not fully signed up to it, I'm okay to do it, but like I said, as long as it's within the limits.
So I noticed that you've swapped between implementation consultant to technical consultant, and basically, like I said, your path has kind of mirrored mine so much, with the exception of you've never actually, according to your profile, set foot into the project management zone.
Yeah, true.
Is that something you just never thought of, or?
I did think of it, and I actually at one point in my career had an option if I wanted to go into the project management versus stay on the technical side of things. I spoke to my mentor then, and I was told that project management is the way to go, because that's good, and it's little, I don't know if that's true or not, but just on a very higher level, you can stay technology agnostic, but you will see different projects and old scale implementations, etc. But I still wanted to be technical, because I think for me, when I say technical, I'm not a hardcore developer either, but I think for me, what I thought about what gives me the most satisfaction, and know that if I solve a problem, that gives me, that's where my job satisfaction is. So if I can design a solution where when it when it gets implemented and it is solving a part of business problem or adding some value, that's where my job satisfaction is. And I'm not saying project management doesn't do it, but yeah, I think the solutioning piece is where I think my heart is. So yeah.
The reason why I asked was I think I had that same moment that you had, because I could have very well gone into being a technical architect for Microsoft. Because yeah, that was the particular point of time. But I had a mentor
right. Yeah.
who actually said I was much better at pulling a team together
right
than probably designing a solution.
Right. And I'm presuming that was probably your thought process as well?
Yes, it was. Yeah. Just like you, I just got a huge amount of satisfaction out of building stuff,
right,
and just putting things together and seeing it solving a problem. And for someone to actually tell me, you know what, your strength lies over here, which is dealing with the messy situation of getting people to do things in a specific way to achieve a specific target. I have to say, when I was younger, I had big ego. I will say that. There's something so satisfying about being good at what you do that people look up to you. And I felt that if I changed, that I would lose that. But I did think long and hard, because there wasn't enough good project managers around me. And I thought, I can do a better job than a lot of these people that I'm seeing. And that's why I changed. And once in a while, I look back with a bit of nostalgia and go, what if I had taken the other road?
Yeah.
Where you are sitting.
Yeah.
But at the same time, for me, I think a different kind of satisfaction came about, which is getting a group of people to pull together to achieve something that on their own or with someone else couldn't have done it. Couldn't have done it in the way that I've done it. So there's that. And also the other thing is what your mentor was saying is kind of true in terms of technology agnostic. And I'm going further away from technology. I'm just gonna look around too, because I bought the solutions architect book because it's something I want to get back to, because something I really enjoy. I can sit in a data migration or integration workshop and really geek out at the details.
Right.
But I couldn't design a solution. I can understand and can talk about it. So yeah, it's just something I think back fondly. And that's a question I wanted to ask you, because it sounds like the natural step, because a lot of people kind of do. If you flip between functional and technical, you then have the full grounding to actually make sure a really complex project can be made successful. Not to say that if you don't have that background you can't, but it just helps so much, I think, to be able to relate to your team members, and they're talking something and you know straight away without them having to give you a primer or briefing on that. So that's a very good one, isn't it? That's I think it's a it's an important decision as well, because I keep thinking is what my growth path might be. And I know that it's very common in our industry to say, if you manage a team, or if you know the budgeting, if you can do that sort of stuff, then there's a long way for you to grow up. But how long are you going to go when you stick to the technical side of things? But I know that this is where I want to be. How far I can go is a question that probably I'll eventually answer it to myself. But we'll see. Let me share just a small bit of perspective on this, because I have had similar type conversations with a lot of other people. And I would say that there's one thing about project management that I've now come to know, is that my job is to make sure that everybody else can do their jobs properly. I remove all the obstacles, and sometimes that means just getting really dirty and having the really tough conversations, really messy stuff, and just shouldering a lot of the politics, shielding the team. And I've kind of developed a style where I can do that. It's a little bit, I find it easy, and I find people relate to me quite easily. but I think many can't do that. Having those difficult conversations and just, instead of protecting the team, I think a lot of PMs think that they pass through. So the customer will say, when is this due? And I go, when is this due? Why is it taking you so long?
Yeah.
And when I see PMs do that, I think that's not your job.
Yeah.
The
Great
job
point. Yeah.
is to manage it so that your team can do the best that they can do, and then you just keeping the boat together.
Yeah.
So when I'm having this conversation, I'm saying, right, you are really good at what you do right now, building a solution, getting the team together, and you're thinking about going to PM. It's really great and it'll stretch you, but this is one bit where maybe not everybody tells you, because it can get quite tough.
Yeah.
And I think some people just don't have it and can't say no to the customer.
Yeah.
And they find, especially if they're the kind who through don't want to make people upset, or the phrase which I'm not a fan of is people pleasing. If they have that, they're going to find the job really, really hard. So I think it sounds and looks like that you understand yourself enough to say this is giving you so much buzz that you don't want to give it up. So just keep at it until you're hungry for something else.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I keep thinking about it like, what's next for me? Not that I've become an expert in what I do, but there will be a point where I might think, what's next for me? And the only thing that comes to my mind is I can only think of what's the next technology stack for me, rather than thinking about what's the next career move or like change of direction in the role. That's like, because I can think of robotics, Einstein, etc. might be the next thing that I may want to work on, but I've never thought about, will I change my role in what I'll do next? So we'll see how it happens. But what you said is so important about the PMs and how they deal with it. So I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask a question, but I'll go ahead. So like what you said, I think there's a very common misconception, isn't it, that project managers or program managers want to make things happen, be very good in front of the client, but will they understand how much of an effort, how much of a basically technical effort and all the team effort goes behind in making something happen? Because business can say, I want to see this in this page, but that's not as simple as, even for a sophisticated system like Salesforce, it sometimes could be quite tricky. So it's not like they ask it and you turn it around in a week, but there's so much complexity and effort that goes behind it. So do you find it, do you find that balance act, is it something that you use too, or do you think that's always a little bit of a tricky line? Or
so you're talking about estimations, yeah, and communicating estimations to actually do a piece of work?
It is, and also as you uncover, you may think that this may have worked, and then your team probably is telling you that it's not that easy, so we may need more time. But do you then think, the team is less efficient, or how do you balance that?
So I think the one advantage that I've had is that almost all the team that I've worked with have been very good. I think if you work in a consulting environment, there's a level of standard. Obviously, there's some few maybe who may not, where the consulting life is not suitable for them. But as a general rule, I can very quickly figure out if my team is good at what they do, right? Whether they talk to me, whether there's trust there. And I will trust them insofar as how they've been with me. So if there's somebody who is very closed and doesn't share, then I can't gauge. Just because you've got a CTA on your title doesn't mean that you're the kind of open-hearted person who will share. So I know another CTA who's very closed and keeps everything close to his chest so that he holds all the pieces. And I find it very hard to trust somebody like that. So if there's someone, okay, let's just go back. In general, I trust my team. Whatever they tell me, I will take at face value. Okay, if you say it's going to be tough, that is what I'm going to communicate to the customer. I'll make sure I'll put a level of risk on it. Okay, so if you're talking about estimation, you say, I think it's going to take 2 days, but possibly if I hit a problem, it's going to take 5. I will tell that to the customer.
What if it takes 10?
Hang on, 1 sec, all right? Before that, I will also make sure that the number that's given to me has all the requisite non-functionals. You make sure you got your test classes done. Do you have deployment in there? Do you have QA in there? Do you have documentation in there? Have you written in solution notes? Have you updated your Jira? And what's that number? Okay. And then I will make sure, depending on where we are in the project, I will have to add, do I have to oversee things? Do I have to go and get other people? All of that put into that. So let's say if it was 2 days, he thinks it's 2 days, it might take 5, but it takes 10, right? So that's a really hard conversation to have with the customer. That's my job, right? Because I'm trusting my team. I've made sure I've done my due diligence. I've put my level of the buffer on it, which I think will be required for deployment, for testing, for documentation, blah, 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 blah. But it takes longer because we hit a really big snag. I will have to tell the customer that. I will have to replan it first. And I say, right, actually, it's going to take 10 days because of these reasons. And then internally, I might have the conversation internal to say why it's 10. Maybe because that resource has exaggerated on their CV. I've had that before in terms of them saying they could do something, but they couldn't. I've also had a situation where something came up which we absolutely did not anticipate. And then I'll have an internal conversation to my company to say, hey, look, this problem came up. I think goodwill is we should split the cost. We should absorb half the customer. So I will make a recommendation on what that situation is. And then I'll go to the customer and say, this is the situation and this is how we are handling it. And I'm talking to you to absorb the other half.
Right. Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Very long.
No. That's exactly what I wanted to know. No, that's really good because, like what you said, it could be for multiple reasons, isn't it? So what I was curious to know was, would that create any certain impression about that specific team member or the team in your mind, or would you be careful from the next time to when you work with the same person again, or that's sort of what I was thinking, because people do, obviously, irrespective of how experienced you are, you obviously learn as you go in your career, isn't it? So yeah.
So what I do is every single new team member, and again, back to CAP, is one of the things with CAP is because it's so big, every new project is a completely different team.
Yeah.
Almost. What I do with every single person is I have a short one-to-one and I say, this is my leadership style and I expect full transparency. If you are fully transparent with me, I will back you up. If in the beginning you're given a task and you're told you've got 2 days to do this and you feel really overwhelmed and you think this is beyond you, you must tell me and I'll find a way to deal with it. You do not sit with it. You do not stay with it evenings and weekends and trying to fulfill it and then just absolutely melting down. If you do that, I can't help you. You must tell me at the start. So I make sure that I lay a very transparent communication within my team. So it doesn't happen. So I don't get, it has happened, but I'm reducing the likelihood of someone hiding something from me that I don't already know. Yeah. So if that person tells me it's going to take 2 days, possibly 5, and it ends up being 10, I will trust that person to not have known that it was going to be 10 when he told me in the first place. And I will find a way to back them up because it's not their fault. Things happen.
Yeah.
So I don't get into the situation where I'll think I'm not going to trust that person anymore unless it's given me a reason not to.
Right. Okay. That's really nice. Sounds very
back to what you were saying. It's about setting the expectations really clear. And I do that with everyone in my team. This is who I am. I will back you up as long as you're honest with me, you flag up, you keep me up to date with your progress, and you don't try and hide things.
Yeah, true. I mean, as the project manager, you might create that channel for people to be open and have those open conversations, isn't it? But then I guess it also, there may be a dynamic of different personalities and whether people want to talk and how much of information or detail they share and all of that as well, and which is the aspect of project management I personally find a bit tricky. Is it's not it's not purely skill based or anything. It's a lot of personality and how you deal with different personalities as well, right? Not just internally or externally. You just bring everyone together, which I think is quite a big and challenging task. But yeah.
Let me tell you a secret. And the secret to emotional intelligence is really active, empathetic listening.
But do people do that? It's not very common, isn't it?
No, it's not. But I do that. And because I volunteer for Samaritans means that I'm on the phone with people who I might violently disagree with, but I don't say it. And I'm very empathetic. And I find that unlocks so many things. So just by saying, can you tell me what is it, just truthfully, what is it that's bothering you? And not being judgmental about it, that will get people to open up. Even those who are very antagonistic.
Yeah.
If they know you're sincere, you've got no agenda, you're not going to get them in trouble for the fun of it, they will respond. Which I think what I found has been easy for me to create teams, to function well.
Yeah. It's really great. It's really nice.
I'm very conscious of time and very respectful of yours. I just want to thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed it. Again, because I said, your path kind of mirrors mine. And the fact that one of the companies you worked with was one of the first companies that I did my project on. And also, sharing a lot of your learnings from working on projects and your personal narrative around the challenges you've had within the tech world. And I'm pretty sure that our listeners will find it very, very useful and very valuable. Thank you so much for your time, Deepthi.
Oh, that's great. Absolutely, anytime. And thanks to you as well. This is a great idea. And I think it's a great platform and medium and content you're generating. So it's absolutely brilliant. Thanks to you.
Thank you very much. Bye for now.